Many thanks for joining, dear viewers. You are watching OBN Horn of Africa. This is our weekly program, Diplomacy, and I'm Fantam Belete, hosting this program. Today, I'm joined by spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Ambassador Nebiyu Tedla. In this episode, we are going to discuss the status of Ethiopian diplomacy. Till the end of our program, stay with us. Your Excellency Ambassador, thank you for joining me and welcome to this program.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Before we dive into our today's discussion, would you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
Well, as you indicated at the opening of your program, I am currently serving as the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And previously, before joining the spokesperson office, I have served at the Ethiopia's permanent representation to the African Union. And before that, I was served as a diplomat with the rank of Minister Counselor at the Ethiopian permanent representative to the United Nations. And I have served as a diplomat in Saudi Arabia as well as in South Africa. And I have served in the headquarters in different departments with different responsibilities.
Could you elaborate on Ethiopia's recent diplomatic achievements regarding port access, please?
Yes, we have been always keen on expanding our port options as a country, given our, especially at the current moment, given our current economic growth and the bulging population, as well as the limited capacity of the current port that we're using vis-a-vis our growing economy to satisfy this growing demand. So it was in this consideration that issues that we have been engaged in the development of the Lapsset corridor that connects southwestern Ethiopia with Kenya Lamu port and the South Sudanese market. We have also been part of the plan to connect the northwestern part of Ethiopia with Port Sudan through railroads. We were also building the Melondi Manda Bure road to connect Ethiopia with the Assab port in Eritrea. So in a nutshell, our efforts to connect Ethiopia with various ports in the region are notable. And the recent move in Berbera is part of the overall objective of expanding the port options for the country.
How has the perception of Ethiopia's need for seaport access evolved among neighboring countries?
Look, our diplomacy regarding this matter has geared towards creating understanding with our neighbors about the fact that Ethiopia is having now a growing economy and a growing population, and this necessitates dependable access to and from the sea. And to achieve this objective, we remained committed to making our neighbors understand our cause, that we would only use legal and peaceful means based on mutual benefit.
Thank you again. How significant was the Prime Minister's speech to Parliament in addressing previously taboo topics like port access, and what impact do you think it had on public and diplomatic perceptions?
The Prime Minister's speech has opened, I can say, the eyes of Ethiopians to see the issue of access to the sea from a new perspective, from a new light. As he said, people seem to have accepted that negotiation and dialogue are important to talk about cross-border resources, especially when it comes to the Nile waters. But when it comes to talks with neighboring countries, with regard to Ethiopia's right to have access to and from the sea, people tend to see this issue as a taboo previously. And sometimes you need leaders that will hope the unthinkable. And our Prime Minister's parliamentary address on this issue has lifted, I can kind of say, this veil or this curtain and set our thinking in that logical manner.
Now let's talk about homegrown economic policy. Could you discuss how Ethiopia's homegrown economic policy has gained recognition internationally and what specific aspects have been praised?
The economic reform under the new political dispensation has set out to meet some key objectives that will maintain registered economic growth for some successive years in the past, and we are now opening up new opportunities for doing business in Ethiopia. One of the objectives also include addressing bottlenecks to private sector growth, our past market failures, and regulatory and investment constraints in some key priority areas identified by the government. And you can take, for example, the opening up of our telecom sector and the coming in of companies like Safaricom in the business. And our international partners understand the potential of this economic reform, and they have not refrained from granting us with loans and working with us on various investment opportunities in the country. And the recent macroeconomic reform process can also be viewed from this perspective.
How has Ethiopia maintained resilience against external pressures regarding this economic policy?
Well, to summarize it, the conflict that we had past years in the northern part of the country, coupled with COVID-19, had affected our economy. The decision to also to, if I may say, the decision to reject Ethiopia from the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, is a case in point here. But we were able to manage to grow our economy, notwithstanding with immense pressure we had faced. Our partners saw our commitment to peace after signing the Pretoria cessation of hostilities agreement, and we are now emerging from the debris of the conflict and the pandemic in the political and economic sectors. So we are now having a better outlook and prospect in this manner.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. International financial institutions such as IMF and World Bank have offered huge financial support to Ethiopia. How do you see this in terms of economic diplomacy?
Well, look, economic diplomacy, one of its objectives is to solicit from our international financial institutions as partners, some development loans, financing, and our international partners, including financial institutions, have clearly observed our efforts to address our past difficulties, especially following the recent challenge that we had. And we are trying to address this issue under the transitional justice mechanism and hold fairly a national dialogue to foster national consensus. And they have also seen Ethiopia's continuing economic growth and its potential for investment under a successful implementation of the homegrown economic reform. And the recent decision of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to provide us with the financial assistance is, I can say, a reflection of all these efforts by the Ethiopian government.
The current Ethiopian foreign policy focuses on prioritizing regional collaboration and re-engaging with the Middle East. How beneficial is this shift from the previous trend, which used to focus only on the West?
As you know, primarily the focus of Ethiopian diplomacy, especially for the last 30 or so years, has always been characterized by the priority it gives to the closing ties with neighboring countries, right? And aside from that, we have maintained a good relationship with the West thus far, and we will continue to do so in the future, as our partners in Europe and the Americas are also our allies. Second, Ethiopia's commitment to deepen its diplomatic ties and expand engagement in the multifaceted areas also applies to the countries in the Middle East. As you said, we have a long history of people-to-people ties with Middle Eastern countries. Ethiopia also has religious, cultural, and many other affinities with many of the countries in the region. However, we do not believe that we have yet explored all the immense potential of each of us to build stronger ties, particularly in trade and investment. And we are also trying to explore the labor market in the region. And we know that the Middle East has huge financial resource. For example, the sovereign wealth fund that many of our Middle East countries have developed is one resource that we can look into, while Ethiopia is endowed with many natural resources, particularly in the agricultural sector. We also have a huge population with a predominant youth that is easily teachable and adaptable in many sectors, including the investment and technology transfer arenas. And that's why we are trying to expand our labor agreements with many of the countries in the Middle Eastern countries. So although we have some strong trade and diplomatic relations with some of the Middle Eastern and Gulf countries, there is still a great opportunity, a great bridge to gap to even expand the ties to a larger extent, and we are working towards that end.
Ethiopia is also strengthening its relations with Asia much more than before. Countries like Pakistan and India are becoming key partners in various ways. How do you see the new approach?
Look, one of our mantras in our foreign policy direction is to have more friends and cultivate relationships with potential allies that are willing to work with us on common objectives. We have maintained our long-lasting relationships with countries in the region, particularly India, Japan, China, and the rest. We have also strong relationship with India in trade, investment, in education, and many other sectors. We have also continued to give principled support to each other in the multilateral forums, including the recent multilateral forum that Ethiopia joined, the BRICS. We have diplomatic presence in one of Asia's vibrant political and diplomatic cities, Jakarta, Indonesia. And with the view of expanding our diplomatic ties in the region, we recently opened an embassy in Pakistan. And since Pakistan is one of the emerging markets in the region, we believe that will have strong ties in many sectors, particularly trade and investment. And a huge number of Pakistani business community members have visited Ethiopia, if you recall, in the last couple of years, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with 2 rounds. And they have seen the unique business opportunities in Ethiopia and the potential areas of investment in the country. And Ethiopian business people are also exploring opportunities to have market access for their products in Pakistan and other middle level economy players in the region. So we are confident that our relations with countries in the region, including India, Pakistan, and others, will bear much more fruits in the future.
Looking ahead, what do you see as the most pressing diplomatic challenges for Ethiopia?
Talking of diplomatic challenge, some unique features have started to define the current age we are living in now. One of them is, of course, the global geopolitical landscape, which seems to have witnessed the emergence of new heavyweight players, mid-level powers, regional groupings, international companies with huge financial and media leverage will also be key players in the world politics and trade. This is a clear departure from the past from the world order that we have been familiar with for a fairly long time. And we are looking at the weakening of the global multilateral setup due to the current global geostrategic tensions. You know, this in return will stifle development efforts of developing countries and affect their relative autonomy and choice to chart their own political and economic pathways based on domestic priorities. So we expect a kind of pressurized global world with many interests and a range of pulling and pushing factors in deciding on political, trade, and many other matters in the world. So coming to Ethiopia, Ethiopia should be able to navigate safely through these waves of many interests while keeping its balance and protecting its neutral, predictable, and principle-based relations with many of the players and many of its partners. The other challenge, particularly in the Horn of Africa, will continue to be terrorism and all sorts of fanaticism. We believe that all of our regional and international actors and partners will work together to combat the ever-growing terrorist elements in the region who are now amassing huge resources they are getting from illegal taxations as well as illegal tradings and acquiring a kind of more sophisticated and advanced weapons. And Al-Shabaab is a case in point, the deadliest and the richest terrorist group in Somalia. Finally, issues at the international level, such as climate change, migration, the emergence of artificial intelligence and other new technologies need the engagement of all developing countries, including Ethiopia, to chart out somehow a better future for humanity.
How important is regional cooperation in addressing both economic and security issues in the Horn of Africa?
As you know, the region, the Horn of Africa, despite its great potential for growth, is shrouded by all sorts of problems. And Ethiopia shares a border with all its neighbors, with 6 countries. And this in itself necessitates a common security arrangement that inhibits illegal human trafficking, illegal trading, arms trafficking, drug trafficking, money laundering, contraband, and many other cross-border criminal activities. We need to strengthen our participation in the Eastern Africa Police Chiefs Cooperation to meet objectives I stated here. The Horn of Africa also should strengthen cooperation under the IGAD framework to put our effort in peace and stability on solid foundation. The ability to maintain security is prerequisite for any kind of economic development, as you know, in the region. Therefore, all countries in the region should be equally committed to creating close ties and solving disputes or to say differences among themselves in a way that shows political maturity. And fostering economic integration with the countries in the region has been our foreign policy goal for successive decades. This can be achieved through deepening ties through the regional common market organizations. And now, thanks to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, we can further expand our areas of engagement, especially in trade, and also in terms of infrastructure linkage. Ethiopia is a champion of this project, particularly in the African Union Agenda 2063 program, and Ethiopian Airlines services will be instrumental in connecting people and markets in the region. And our efforts to connect the region with energy grid can also be cited as one practical example. We are now linking with energy with our neighboring countries, including Sudan, Djibouti, Kenya, and that will further develop in the future. So cooperation in trade will not only strengthen the economic stance of the countries in the region, but also their ability to cope with the previous issues that we discussed, the global level influence. So we can withstand those kinds of market shocks with their cooperation in the area. And aside from trade, countries in the region should create platforms to exchange their strong experience in various sectors. For instance, you can mention Ethiopia's Green Legacy Initiative. This is a shareable experience that we can share with our neighbors, so that can further boost the integration efforts in the region.
What role can Ethiopia play in fostering such cooperation among Horn of African countries?
Well, as I said earlier, Ethiopia is a leading hub in the region for economic development, infrastructure linkage, and efforts for greater political security and stability initiatives. And as a center in the region, Ethiopia championed various programs of the African Union, particularly the infrastructure projects to connect not only the region in terms of air service and energy linkage, but as well as the continent. And through the African peer review mechanisms and the NEPAD initiatives, these efforts are now being appraised on a yearly manner. So we are trying to take a lead in this effort, and we are trying to take our share of the efforts in creating somehow integrated region.
What do you advise diplomatic missions representing Ethiopia in different parts of the world in committing themselves for ensuring their country's national interest?
Well, as a developing country, backwardness and poverty is one of the problems that still shackles the country in many ways. And one of the ways diplomats can contribute to combating it is by strengthening their economic diplomacy activities. And this may include, among others, searching for foreign direct investment opportunities and financial grants and loans, as well as funds for Ethiopia-based projects, and finding foreign markets for our products. And they need to build strong connections with Ethiopian financial institutions to have a clear understanding of Ethiopia's needs with regard to debt restructuring and other financial matters that have impacts on the economic well-being of the country. Our diplomats should also give priority to protect the rights of Ethiopian nationals in the countries in which they reside, and further engage them for positive outputs in economic, political, and social matters in Ethiopia. You know, the cooperation in all matters related to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, for instance, has been impressive, and it should continue in that way.
How do you summarize the diplomatic achievements of Ethiopia in the last 6 years, and particularly in 2016?
Well, in 2016 Ethiopian calendar, our diplomatic activities have focused on various efforts. One is on political diplomacy, with the aim of developing partnership and friends with as many partners as possible. We have tried to garner that, and our principals, including the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and the House Speakers, and other government officials have managed to shuttle between different capitals in the world and try to develop bilateral relations. The second aspect that we can mention is in the areas of diplomatic and economic diplomacy activities. And here we have managed to gain and attract foreign direct investment from various countries. We have managed to gain financial loans and assistance for our development efforts. And of course, our effort in the diplomatic activity has focused on building positive image of our country. And fairly enough, we have managed to build that. And of course, the citizens-centered diplomacy, we have managed to attach greater importance to the well-being of our nationals living abroad and try to make them part of the national development effort. And with that effort, we have brought up positive results from the diaspora outside for them being part of the development effort through financial contributions, as well as other emergency national calls, and of course in the political aspect as well. We have managed to achieve a positive result, but that doesn't mean that all roads were smooth and out of challenge. We had our own fair challenge, and with the proper appraisal, we'll try to address those challenges in the coming budget year properly.
What do you advise peoples of the country to participate or to plant the trees that Ethiopia has planned to plant 600 million in a day?
Well, this is a great initiative that started the past few years. And this is part of our effort to develop green, resilient economy. At the same time, it is an effort to leave our legacy for the coming generation. So, as you rightly said, coming days, there will be a nationwide effort to plant as many seedlings as possible in a nationwide campaign. And we in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would also have a share in that effort. And a huge delegation from the ministry led by the higher officials will travel to the southern part of Ethiopia to be part of this initiative. So it is a positive step forward to create a country that can transfer a positive green legacy to the coming generation. And we, using this opportunity, we call upon our citizens to come out in public and be part of this great initiative.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ambassador, if you have any concluding message, please do.
Well, since we are talking about diplomacy and international relations, diplomacy should not be left out to only those of us who are considered to be career diplomats, right? So each of our citizens at home or abroad can serve as ambassadors of Ethiopia. The success of the high-level conferences we continue to hold in Ethiopia requires the engagement of every citizen from all walks of life. The flagship projects in Ethiopia, such as the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam and other efforts to build a green economy and boost the tourism sector, need the cooperation and understanding of all Ethiopians. Some political decisions need the media engagement of our citizens to create a clarity for the domestic and international audience. And all the points I raised earlier here boil down to one thing. All Ethiopians, regardless of their career, regardless of their background, regardless of their ethnic differences, regardless of their education preparedness, can be diplomats and should play their role in boosting the country's image and creating understanding of the policies of the Ethiopian government among the international community.
Spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Your Excellency Ambassador Nebiyu Tedla, thank you for your time and for your insights.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it for having me.
You're welcome. Dear viewers, this brings us to the end. Thank you for watching and stay connected with other programs of OBN Horn of Africa.